Welcome to Where Secrets Go to Die, the disappearance of Derrick Henagan. From the Detroit Free Press, I'm John Wisely. So when we left off last time, we had just found a promising lead. You remember, it was that blue jug. Jess, Bingo. The human remains detection dog on our search, barked. What does it mean when she's barking like that?
She's alerting to the scent of a cadaver on that looks like a water jug of some nature.
Now that means she thought it could contain traces of human remains. But whose remains? Mike, the body hunter, and Bert, Jess's handler, were chasing a tip that made them believe it could be the remains of a man reported to have disappeared in some nearby woods in 2008. That man was Derrick Henagan. I've spent a lot of time researching his case. I know it pretty well, but I've got to admit, Derrick was a bit of a mystery to me. I never met him. He's been missing for 15 years. Social media wasn't much of a thing yet, so it's hard to just peek into his life. Some stuff was easy to figure out. He was 6 feet tall, kind of skinny, about 170 pounds. He had brown eyes, a goatee, and wavy brown hair that he sometimes wore slicked back. He also had tattoos on his shoulders. Both of his ears were pierced, and he wore a nipple ring. I've also learned that he was the father of a son who received nightly phone calls from his dad around bedtime, until they stopped suddenly before the boy's 6th birthday. Derrick was a beloved son himself. Before he disappeared, he pleaded with his mother to get him out of the Upper Peninsula. She never forgave herself for not going to get him.
I just don't know how families go through this for years, because this has been the hardest 3 years of my life.
That's Derrick's mom, Betty Henagan, from an interview with the local TV station in 2011. That was 3 years after Derrick disappeared. By that point, she didn't have any illusions about her son coming back.
He's gone. Mother knows. I just know he would have called his little boy, or he'd have got a hold of me somehow.
Derrick was born in August 1972. He disappeared in August of 2008, just a couple weeks shy of his 36th birthday. He'd only lived in Michigan's Upper Peninsula for about 8 months. Most people up there, they didn't really know him very well. We wanted to learn more about him to see if we could uncover something that might help solve his case. We figured the logical place to do that was in his hometown. So we took a trip.
Did you see that? This house right here, this white house, is where the Henagans live.
So Derrick would have lived there when he was a kid, or?
Yep, that's where he would have grown up.
That's Tressa Beltran. She was police chief in Hartford, Michigan, Derrick's hometown, when we visited. She gave us a little tour. Hartford has about 2,500 people. It's in the western part of lower Michigan. If you're driving I-94 west from Detroit to Chicago, Hartford is most of the way across the mitten.
Okay, so Harding's is our local store. It's like the meeting spot. I can't go in and out without running into people who want to talk.
Now, Hartford is like a lot of small towns, and if you're just driving through, it seems like a pretty harmless kind of place.
And like those woods right there, in the summertime, we'd have to patrol through there because that would be one of the places where kids would go to make out or do whatever they were doing.
Main Street through downtown is about 3 blocks long. There's a funeral home at one end, a Dollar General store at the other. Just off Main Street, you've got your standard issue white water tower. City Hall is in the middle near that. It's got one of those big clocks that faces out onto the sidewalk. There's also a laundromat, a barber shop, a couple of bars, and some empty storefronts. There is a metal factory in town, but it gets rural in a hurry. Derrick spent most of his life here. He played sports as a kid. He wrestled in grade school, played basketball in junior high and high school. He did a lot of the fun stuff you'd expect in a small town.
We made mud pies, throw them at people.
That's Kimberly Moore, a childhood friend of Derrick.
I mean, it was just thrown at each other. I mean, wasn't mean to others. That's how we had fun.
Kimberly met Derrick in grade school, and they went all the way through high school together. She was one of 8 kids in her family. Derrick and his brother Keith, they hung out with them constantly. She remembers Derrick as funny and sweet.
He was so popular, everybody wanted to be around him, and he was everybody's friend, and he never had a mean bone in his body.
Really?
If you're down and don't have pot to piss in, he will be there to help you. That was the kind of person Derrick was. Derrick always opened his heart and everything to everybody. He tried to help as many people as he could.
Kimberly also said Derrick was almost always wearing sunglasses, and his friends nicknamed him Hollywood.
He has the most beautiful eyes and the perfect skin, and he could have just been a model.
Chief Beltran, she agrees.
He was very good looking. The girls around here loved him. He had a lot of male friends. I think a lot of his friends might have wanted to hang out with him so that they could meet girls too, because that's the kind of person that Derrick was.
In high school, Derrick got into grown-up toys. Cars, motorcycles, snowmobiles, off-road quads. Those kinds of hobbies are popular around here. Hartford even has its own little racetrack, Hartford Speedway, just on the edge of town.
The stripe in turn 4, the green flag waves, and the feature is underway at Hartford Speedway.
It's a short walk from the high school. It advertises Friday night dirt track racing on Michigan's widest 3/8 of a mile track. Derrick and his friends hung out there.
Cars sideways, cars together, car upside down, 2 cars upside down in turn number 2.
I mean, that racetrack has been here forever. He'd be one of the ones I could see sneaking out there and driving on that dirt track, just racing.
Chief Beltran spent more than 30 years on the force. Derrick was a teenager when she was a young officer.
Derrick was the typical, I don't want to, bash any used car salesman, but that's how Derrick's from the time that I remember meeting him, he was always the kind who could sell you. If you were, in Hades, he could sell you matches to keep the fire going. That's just the kind of kid he was.
She'd see him around town when he was getting into trouble and when he wasn't.
Okay, Hartford is a small community. Everybody knows everyone. They know everybody's business. It's one of those where now if somebody was to do something, like if a young kid makes a mistake, you can go and say, I'm going to tell your parents.
There is another reason we wanted to talk to Chief Beltran.
His mom and I became friends, but we got closer after Derrick came up missing.
She wasn't involved in the investigation of Derrick's disappearance, but she could explain the police work, and she could sympathize as a mom.
Yeah, we hope and pray. I just can't imagine being a mom or a dad, especially around the holidays, knowing that he's out there somewhere, whether, he's alive or whatever. Betty just wanted him home. We all do.
Now, Hartford is the kind of place where people know their neighbors and help them when they can. Derrick certainly did, up to a point.
It's a small town, small neighborhood, so we were all pretty tight.
That's Melissa Woodall. She lived a block over from Derrick. She's about 5 years older than he was, but she knew him and his mom pretty well.
He was fun. He was the loudest guy in the room, and you'd know that laugh anywhere. He was just Derrick. I mean, I'm not saying we didn't tussle a couple of times, because we have, him being young and stupid. I was older than him and I would point it out, but, just silly stuff, really. For the most part, he was a good guy. He was a real good guy.
Melissa's had some health troubles most of her life, including several back surgeries.
And I was really pretty incapacitated, and even at that young of an age, he would come over and do my dishes for me and help me clean up or just whatever I needed. I mean, he was really a good guy.
But Melissa says Derrick never wanted to appear soft.
He would tell me, Melissa, you better not tell anybody I was doing your dishes. He didn't want any of the guys to know, but he would do it.
That's sort of a recurring theme I found in researching Derrick. In his world, being tough mattered. Derrick's dad, Terry Henagan, he was a member of the Avengers Motorcycle Club. That's a tough guy biker group that started outside Detroit in the 1960s. When you talk to people in Hartford, you hear a lot of different stories about Terry. Some people say he was president of the club. Others say he'd been involved in shootouts with police, or that he'd killed people for the club, tattooing the names of his victims on his arm. Truth be told, I found no record of that. I suspect that image is exaggerated. Some of it may be urban legend. One thing I did confirm, court records show Terry Henagan did prison time in the 1990s. He was convicted on a cocaine conspiracy charge. So Derrick's Hartford was not all mud pies and Friday night at the races. One other mystery about Derrick, at least to me, was part of his physical description. Some of the posters that describe him when he disappeared noted that he had 3 deformed fingers on his right hand. I figured it must have been some kind of motorcycle accident. But his friend Kimberly told me the real story.
In school, he took woodshop. When the bell went off, the board slipped and the blade went through. So yeah, that's how it wasn't completely off, but it was they were hanging there. He was just like, because he was tough. He didn't want to let nobody know that he wasn't, and that he was a wimp. So probably by the time he got out of the school, he probably did cry, but would not let nobody see him cry.
There's that tough guy image again. I guess when you're hanging out with the bad boys, riding motorbikes, you need to be tough. Being tough meant something. Being tough was cool. Like a lot of kids around here, Derrick and his buddies drank beer and smoked weed. But after high school, Kimberly said Derrick got deeper into drugs.
The coke, the LSD, the crystal meth. He got into the hard drugs.
We'll be back after the break. And we're back. Derrick's childhood friend, Kimberly Moore, told me repeatedly Derrick was a good guy, a great guy, a sweet guy. But she'll tell you honestly, Derrick had his demons, especially after he got into drugs. In 2005, Derrick was charged with domestic violence. He pleaded it down to disturbing the peace. In 2006, he was charged with passing bad checks. He pleaded guilty.
Derrick was one of those where if he got in trouble, we'd say, Derrick, go turn yourself in. He always showed up.
Chief Beltran again.
You know, he wasn't one where we had to go looking for him to investigate him.
Also in 2006, Derrick got into sort of an epic bar fight at a place on Main Street in Hartford.
Right there with the Miller Lite. That would have been Joe's bar at the time where he got into the fight.
There was a lot of people watching it. Yes, there was.
Kimberly was there that night with a bunch of their friends. She said Derrick duked it out with one of the locals who hung out at the bar. The man he fought at first told police Derrick sucker punched him for no reason. He would later say the fight was over a $100 drug debt. Derrick claimed he slapped the man in self-defense, but the cops questioned that, given the guy's broken jaw. Here's how Kimberly remembers it.
They was playing pool. He set his drink on his table. Well, he won the game. The guy got mad, and us, spit in Derrick's drink, and that the fight was on.
Kimberly said it got ugly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, chairs got thrown, tables got thrown.
It eventually spilled out onto the sidewalk before the cops showed up.
It was a big fight. The people that knew Derrick was just made sure that nobody jumped in. If you're going to fight, it's always one-on-one. There's nobody else needs to get into it. That's between them two, nobody else. And that's just the way the whole town felt.
Derrick was eventually charged with aggravated assault. The man he fought, well, he was not. I asked the locals, would you say that Derrick won that fight?
Yes, we would. Broke his jaw, cracked the side of his nose, blacked his eye.
Chief Beltran agrees.
Yeah, he really did some damage to this young man, and who was bigger than him, I might add. I think that the gentleman that he was involved in a fight with was mentioned as a possible suspect in his missing case also.
I should note, police investigated several theories on Derrick's disappearance, including at least one that he was killed near his hometown. When Derrick had that bar fight, his life appears to have been going downhill for a while. In 2005, he'd filed for bankruptcy. He listed zero income that year or in the year before. Among his creditors was an addiction rehab service. Another one was the state's unemployment insurance agency. It claimed Derrick collected almost $8,500 in unemployment benefits that he didn't deserve. They wanted their money back. I learned a lot more about Derrick by researching him through courts and other public records, but I should tell you about a couple of times I struck out in my reporting. As I said, Derrick has a brother. His name is Keith. He still lives in the area, but he didn't respond to our request for an interview. We also struck out with Derrick's ex-wife. Derrick had married a local woman. Her name was Sherry. Together they had a son. They named him Race. Sherry and Derrick eventually split up, though he called pretty much every night to talk to his son. Race was not quite 6 when his dad disappeared. Now, as I said, Sherry declined to talk to us, but she did talk to the state police after Derrick went missing. She told them what she remembered about him. Quote, Derrick was a hustler. He was the biggest hustler in the world. He could sell. He could sell snow to an Alaskan. He had the gift of gab, and you either loved him or you hated him, unquote. Sherry liked that about him. Quote, if he walked into a room, all eyes were on him. He just had a presence about him. He commanded attention, unquote. Sherry described his appearance, including a necklace he sometimes wore, saying, quote, he might have had our wedding band on it, but I don't know. She was honest about their relationship. She said they divorced in 2006, in part because of Derrick's drug problem. Sherry worked in the corporate office of a bank. Quote, he was writing at least $100 checks every day in my name off of my account. I was overdrawn just about every day. So I ended up basically going bankrupt because of it. And I lost my house and my cars and basically my life, unquote. She also described their breakup. Quote, we had split up a couple of times, and each time, well, the first time, he said that he would go to rehab, and he went to rehab, and stayed for a few days, and said he felt all better, so I believed him, unquote. Sherry said that a couple months later, she moved out, quote, after he kind of beat me up, and threatened to kill me, and whatnot, unquote. When I read that in the police report, wow, I saw a darker side to Derrick, beyond just his drug use. But friends tell us that despite their troubles, Derrick's disappearance was very hard on Sherry, and she doesn't like to revisit it. Look, I can't begin to imagine what it must be like to lose someone so suddenly, with no explanation, or trying to explain that to a 6-year-old who's expecting dad to call. There's pain here on a whole bunch of levels.
Derrick was really strung out on drugs when he left, and he really hurt a lot of his friends.
That's Melissa Woodall again. Derrick's former neighbor. She remembers the last time she saw him. She had a car full of groceries. She stopped by Derrick's place to ask him a favor. She wanted him to carry her groceries into her place because of her bad back. Derrick agreed, and she told him to hurry. Some of the groceries were frozen.
Well, I sat outside my house and waited and waited and waited, and I knew it was because he was doing drugs. And so, like an hour later, he came, and by then I had slowly lugged everything in myself, and I was upset about it. So when he knocked on the door wanting to carry stuff in, and it was already in, and I knew why, I just didn't answer the door. And then I had heard that he went up north to get off drugs, and I was really, really happy to hear that. But, yeah, I feel bad. That was our last interaction.
Derrick was working on a traveling auto auction, and soon after arriving in the UP, he met a woman, Diana Maddox. Diana? She said they met by chance. She said she was visiting her brother at a tattoo parlor. One of Derrick's co-workers was there. They invited her to join them for a drink at a local bar, which she eventually did.
And who walks in? Derrick.
That's Diana.
He walked in, driving an Escalade. He told me he was the boss of the company.
She said she even remembers what he was wearing, a pinstripe suit. She kept that suit for years.
I had to save the suit. This pinstriped tuxedo suit. He thought he was all that in a bag of chips. I believed it. I believed he was the boss of the company.
Diana said at first she wasn't interested.
My brother, BJ, I said, don't let me end up with this dude. He says, I won't. Well, Derrick's like, come on. Drunk, yeah, I got drunk with him. Snuck out the back door, and I stayed till 5, 6 o'clock with Derrick in his motel room. My brother pounded on the door. Get out of there, Di. No, you're in there with him. Derrick's like...
So that night after the bar together led Derrick and Diana to move in together. Di admits she was lonely. She was still dealing with the loss of her ex-husband. He died when his truck crashed a few months before she met Derrick. Derrick? It's hard to know what moved him. He'd left a lot of baggage in Hartford. Maybe he was looking for a new chapter. Derrick and Di rented a house on a 2-lane road. It's about 8 miles southwest of Newberry. But the relationship was rocky from the get-go. They fought often. Derrick continued to find trouble with the law. By August, Diana was about 5 months pregnant, but the relationship was failing. Derrick called his mother to say he was leaving Diana. Derrick still wanted to see the baby Diana was carrying, but he wasn't going back.
Yeah, that's on this August the 2nd, he called his mom and said, come and get me because, things were getting heated and I don't want to be here anymore. I want to come back home.
That's Police Chief Tressa Beltran again.
And that's when the mom said, no, you need to just work things out. And then he contacted his father, I believe on the 3rd and the 4th, and asked the father to send him money for something to get him back here. And I don't know if the dad did that, but when I did talk to the dad, he said no, that he'd never went there and got him or anything.
His mom, Betty Henagan, later described her phone call to a friend in an email. It's a lengthy note by an anguished mother. I'll read you just a little bit of it here. Quote, "He called me to come and get him, and I let him down when he really needed me. And this I live with every day of my life. I should have went and got him. If I would have went and got my son, he would be alive." Derrick definitely sensed that he was in danger.
He was worried about what might happen to him. So I figured that sometime or another somebody must have threatened him.
That's Tom Strand, Betty's longtime boyfriend. After Derrick's parents divorced, Tom and Betty became a couple. Tom saw up close the emotional toll Derrick's disappearance took on Betty. She was immediately suspicious, and he suspected foul play from the start.
The one thing I always did remember was, but it was like when he came up missing, and Di called Betty to say he was missing. And that was like a day or two before anybody knew he was missing.
Kimberly Moore, Derrick's childhood friend, said word of his disappearance spread fast in Hartford.
When the story came through, it was like everybody stopped dead in their tracks doing everything. Hartford was like a ghost town when that happened.
Pretty soon, everyone had a theory on exactly what happened to Derrick.
I don't know where my son is. I know somebody up there murdered him, and they're going to get caught and they're going to jail. Because I'm not going to shut up, and I'm not going away. And I've got people backing me, and they're helping me 100%. I want who done this to my son arrested, and I want to bring his remains home, bury him properly. He wasn't a bag of trash, and someone just threw him out like one.
Next time on Where Secrets Go to Die.
The girls came in and bought all the cleaning supplies, all the bleach and stuff that I had on the shelves, and a bunch of other cleaning supplies that I had in the store.
This podcast is a production of the Detroit Free Press. It was investigated, written, and hosted by me, John Wisely. Our executive director is Anjanette Delgado. Our executive producer is Darcy Moran. Kathy Kalashevsky is our story editor, and Jim Schaefer is our managing editor. Nicole Avery Nichols is editor of the Detroit Free Press. Sound design and mix by Garrett Tiedemann. Original theme music by Camilla Cantu and Brian Castillo. Thanks to associate audio producer Robin Chan and development and contributing producer Tad Davis. And a special thanks to former Free Press photojournalist Kathleen Galligan, whose initial reporting was instrumental to this story. Outside audio in this episode is courtesy of World Racing Group, Jody Newman, and Wood TV 8. For more on this story, including photos, videos, and source documents, see our Where Secrets Go to Die show notes. If you have a tip for me, you can send it in an encrypted email to wiselyj@proton.me. To support investigative journalism like this, become a Detroit Free Press subscriber. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast. That's a huge help to us. See you next time. If you or someone you know has experienced domestic violence, help is available through the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-SAFE or by visiting their website at thehotline.org. For help with mental health or substance use disorders, visit samhsa.gov or call their hotline at 800-662-HELP for free confidential referrals.